What is up YouTube, and welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video. It's time for the tier list of this patch, and there have been a few changes, not necessarily for the God tier champions, but within the S tier. And with that said, let's hop right into the video. For the Baron lane, we don't see necessarily any big changes. The biggest, most notable change is about set that's incoming. Since this list only depicts the meta and everything below S tier is not depicted as the meta or described as the meta, we heavily focus within the S tier. So, set changes are incredibly overpowered. These changes make him so much more durable and give him so much more damage with the right hit of his passive that this champion has gotten a lot stronger. In the previous times, he was not really a good laning champion because he simply lacked damage, but he still had the opportunity to just throw in the tank into the enemy team and then completely wipe them with a quick combo. Now with the health regen changes, second wind as well as defensive boots and heartsteel have become even more powerful on this champion, so you're absolutely good in place when you're a set main. The next question, or the next thing about the next champion, is going to be Yone. Yone has received the buffs that are crazily increasing his damage in the mid to late game when he gets to build crit. In the Baron lane department, he can't necessarily go crit in the early game because it doesn't do too much for him. And with the changes he has to his W or his second ability, his laning power has been a little bit weaker than before because the bonus AD damage on your first ability is barely noticeable. But in honesty, it's not really that much big of a change, but in reality, many people perceive Yone's lane as now incredibly broken, when in reality, nothing has changed for his laning phase. The first item are Berserker's Greaves into Blade of the Rune King, and then you transition into crit items. Another more notable thing about the Yone change is the fact that he can go for Infinity Edge more often now than he has to go for Mortal Reminder. Yone doesn't deal reduced crit damage anymore, and the amplification rate of Infinity Edge has been increased as well. Therefore, Yone is dealing even more damage in the mid and late game department, really nicely transitioning into crit items. But don't forget, you do not want to build too many crit items because you become way too squishy. You still have defensive items that you can go for example, Twin Guard or Divine Slanderer or anything along those lines depending on the game you're playing. For the tank tier, I've put Nasus down from the God tier into the S tier, even though fundamentally nothing much has changed, but Poppy is still one of the most broken champions within the Baron lane. During the laning phase, Poppy has 0 counters within the game. She wins every single thing and all she has to do is just fight, fight, fight. Poppy has absolute control over wave state, trading, diving, everything. So if you're, for example, dual queue with a jungler and you like to play Poppy, plus having a jungler on your team, then the enemy team is going to suffer a lot because you will dive the enemy top laner on cooldown, and even champions like Volibear can't really do anything about that one. Now for the Nasus changes. I've made a post on Patreon which is freely accessible for anyone who is a free member, and even I think without being a free member. But here's a quick TLDR. Nasus was weak 1 to 4 anyway before and after the buffs. On level 5 he finally can start playing, on Sheen and Boots he was really strong. The nerfs he's received don't really tackle the early game phase of Nasus where he was weak anyway, and don't really change anything because Nasus was only taken what was given from levels 1 to 4 and has to put heavy emphasis on wave state. TLDR after TLDR, Nasus nerf isn't as big as you think. And by the way, this video is sponsored by Eneba.com, and it's a gaming marketplace with over 40,000 products with an ever-increasing interest to expand their library to be the go-to point for your every gaming need. They will bring you the hottest deals in the market, be it new or old, and with an excellent Trustpilot score, you can rest assured that you'll receive every product you order. And don't worry, there's even a 24/7 live support to clear any concerns you may have with any of your purchases. And now, back to the video. For the jungle role, we have a new champion within the S tier, and that is going to be Nocturne. This champion is absolutely stupid in the way he functions, and turning off the lights for people is kinda tough because it makes side laning really difficult. If there are a few champions within the S tier that you have completely forgotten or believe are weak, for example, we have Ambassa, really strong, we have Aatrox, Kindred, even Echo or Viego. All of these champions within the S tier depict the meta in a beautiful way in your normal games. If you look into the A tier or lower, for example, Evelynn, she has received buffs, but the problem is Evelynn cannot function into any of the high priority AD junglers because she doesn't do enough damage. The sudden impact changes as well as the magic resist buffs of the durability patch hurt her way too much that even these buffs on her first ability will not compensate for that. But don't get me wrong, you can most definitely play Evelynn, but if the enemy picks up one more on a champion, you will not be able to one-shot them, and that completely ruins the way your champion is played. As for the tank tier, Amumu still reigns supreme simply due to his simplicity as well as impact when you have to do nothing on this champion. But many people forget that you actually have to farm to be impactful and therefore fall behind an Amumu because they perma-gank. But that's more like a Rammus thing and not like an Amumu thing. Other champions, for example the Poppy jungle buff, they don't necessarily change anything for how good Poppy already was, she's just better now. But it's not like a better from, oh my god, she's now god tier. No, not really, it's simply the same. It's like, for example, looking at the Shen buffs on minions and being like, now this champion is OP. No, he still loses all the matchup he lost before, and he still does well in all the matchups he played before. So fundamentally, nothing has changed within the power rankings of the champion, because, well, the champion didn't change to any meaningful degree. For the mid lane tier list, we have in the mage department Ryze still reigning supreme. The reason is, even though he lost I think 30 damage on his third ability and 10 damage on his first ability in the flat department as well as 5% scaling, the champion still does way too much damage. If you want to roughly compare his power spikes to other champions, you can view Ryze 3 items as a 5 item ordinary mage power spike, and therefore he will still one-shot you because he has simply too much damage. The nerfs don't really affect how he's played in that regard, so it's way less potent than you believe it is. If anything, it makes him weaker in the Baron lane because Merc threats are so much more prevalent there than in the mid lane. Another cool buff we have seen comes to Vex. Vex has really needed buffs for a long time, and these changes, especially to the cooldown of her most used ability, really come in clutch. Nonetheless, she is still not able to just claim her place among the most powerful mages due to the problematic kit of hers. She doesn't have as much damage and she is super committal compared to other champions, and it isn't enough yet. But still, she's a solid pickup into certain comps, so if the enemy team has a lot of mobility characters, Vex can truly be an S tier champion or even a God tier champion within that specific draft. Outside of that draft though, I would stay away from that one. For the assassin tier, I've put Zed into the lower tier in A, because this champion in the mid lane just doesn't do anything. Unfortunately, he's just so much better in the jungle department that you truly do not want to pick up Zed in mid lane in any scenario. The most interesting addition though is going to be Nocturne within the S tier, and you're wondering, why Nocturne mid lane? Nocturne has the first ability, and this ability has an insane range which allows him to proc first strike reliably, and every single time he has his ultimate ability available, he can kill the enemy mid laner and he can rotate pretty well, whereas the enemy laner can't really follow up on that one. And you have to factor in that he has insane wave killer similar to Echo thanks to his passive, making him very problematic to deal with. And if you're wondering, why the hell is Echo the best assassin in mid lane? It's quite simple. This champion has the best early game out of all the mid lane champions by having insane wave clear, which then allows him to go for insane invades or playing the map by just invading other enemy jungle camps, ganking people. No other mid lane champion has the capability of doing that to that degree. As for the other tier, Corki is still reigning supreme, closely followed by Aatrox mid lane if you have the experience on that champion. Nasus mid isn't necessarily weaker than before, it's still the same champion, still the same gameplay loop, and you still can't break him as a mage. And whenever he presses the second ability Wither on you and the enemy jungle is close, you're going to die, and you're going to lose every single 2v2. For the AD carry tier list, we have Corki still as by far the best, similar to the mid lane, closely followed by champions like Misfortune, Tristana, Xayah, Varus, and Sivir. But all these champions have certain conditions why you want to pick them into or where you want to pick them into, so you have to think about that one before you pick them. The only champions you can pick most of your games are Corki, Ezreal, as well as Varus. All the other champions have a few more conditions which make them shine, but they are still heavy meta. In the A tier we have champions that are weaker than the S tier peers, but also have certain places in duo scenarios or certain drafts. If we talk about the weakest champions within this tier, we have Jinx, Ashe, and of course the lovely Caitlyn. And now you might be wondering, why is Nyla in the same tier then? Nyla is only an exclusive counter pick, and you would never ever blind pick Nyla as an AD carry. So technically, again I said this earlier or in another tier list, I would need another tier that says purely counter pick, and it would just have so many things in there, the same as duo only has things in there. For example, Samira is only a duo queue champion, Draven only a duo queue champion. You would never ever pick these champions without that factor, and champions like Vayne or anything within the B tier are just so much worse. Unironically, the worst champion in the game right now in the AD carry position is Kalista, by a large margin. Now for the mages, Ryze still completely overstat and therefore really powerful paired up with any engaged champion as an APC. And yeah, I've explained many times why different APCs are good and bad, but most of the time, or to give you like an easy rundown, it's all about consistency on these champions, how much influence they have, how much time they need to come online, and how much weaker they are compared to their peers. There are a few exceptions, few specific or exotic combinations, for example, Swain as well as Senna in combo, Morgana and Leona, like all of these things. But again, this list only exists to show you the meta, which is the S tier, and anything below that one is not the meta, or is like something like off meta, or niche picks, or counter picks, or anything like this. So as long as you go with S tier, you're probably having the most success because these are the strongest champions, unless you're like a one trick that has played 1,000 games on Twitch or 10,000 games on Twitch, then obviously you'll perform better on Twitch than, for example, on Lucian. Even though it must be pretty hard to underperform on Lucian compared to Twitch. For the support champions, nothing has changed, and I'll give you the brief rundown about the Enchanter class. So Engage is the same, Carry is the same, so I won't tackle this. Enchanter champions. Similar to the other post, or similar to the other statement, I made a little post about Enchanter champions. Enchanter champions lost 6% healing and shielding power on 3 items in total. Staff of Flowing Water now has 15 haste less and costs 100 gold more. So nothing really has changed. Harmonic Echo is 10% healing change on the thresholds. So again, not really a change, because it doesn't really take away any of the strength. So Enchanter supports are still stronger than before we've gotten the Lucidity Boots change, and therefore cannot be weaker than they were before. So yeah, most of the changes were major nothing burgers, and not really much has changed within the meta of the game. Don't let people bait you with, oh my god, this is now broken, this is now so weak. It's simply not true. It doesn't reflect anything of the game at a high level, and trust me, you can pick any champion you want and still have success. It only really matters the higher you go. And depending on your stats, it also doesn't matter at the highest level, because, well, that's how the matchmaking works in this game. As per usual, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more content. And see you soon for more anything WildRift. Be it streams, be it videos, be it anything. We see each other very soon. Bye bye.